We're looking at lesson 19 today. Anytime you have a value word problem, you want to make two equations. What did I just say? Anytime you have anytime you have a value word problem, you have two equations. Word problem. One equation is about the number of items. And then one equation is going to be about the value of the items. One's about the number of items and one is about the value. You remember nickels and dimes and quarter problems? That's an example where you have 25 of the coins and then you figure out how much the value of them is. Okay? That's going to be what they're going to be looking like. Okay. So Karamagu, I don't know. He had 50 nickels and dimes. And the value was $4. And it asked how many of each kind of coin did he have? Y'all haven't already done these? Not this year? Y'all haven't done these this year? Okay. So he had how many nickels and dimes? 50. Does that make sense? And it said the value is $4. So how would I set up that equation? Do you agree? 400 cents. $4 is the same thing as 400 cents. How much is a nickel worth? 5 cents. How much is a dime worth? That's where those numbers came. That's the value for the nickels, values for the dimes. What would you want to do to solve for your N and your D? Elimination. I would think that'd be a little bit quicker on these. What would you multiply? By the top equation? And what would you get? Do you agree? That makes sense? What would happen? Bless you. The ends would cancel. You'd have 5D equals what? Do you agree? So how many dimes would we have? Do you agree with 30? Yes. If you got a negative number, you did something wrong because you can't have negative dimes. And if you get a decimal, you did something wrong on these. They should be whole numbers because you can't have half of a dime. Well, half of a dime is a nickel, but they're not going to give you half of a dime. So we have 30 dimes. How many nickels would we have? Where'd you get that? 50 minus 30? Yeah. Y'all see how that works? Any questions on these? None? All right. The fishmonger Do I care what a fishmonger is? No, not really. He sold codfish for 6 pence each and mussels for 1 pence each. Does it matter what a pence is? Not really. I mean, he sold codfish for 6 pence and mussels for 1 pence each. Does that make sense? If Harriet bought a total of 26 items and spent 86 pence, how many codfish did she buy? She bought 26 items and spent 86 pence. What should the first equation be about? The number. Okay, how many did she buy? She bought 26 items. Okay. Do you agree? Does that make sense? Okay. Codfish are 6 pence and mussels are 1 pence. And she spent a total of 86 pence. How would I set that up? Does that make sense? Any questions on those? Okay. What would you do to solve? You do what? Make this negative? Make this one negative? Put a negative sign in front of each term? Okay. What would you get? You agree? So C would equal what? You agree with that? So C equals 12. How many mussels would we have? How'd you get that? 12 plus 14 has to be 26. Any questions on that one? All right. We've got two different triangles. Do they look congruent? No, not at all. Okay. Whenever two angles in a triangle have the same measure as two angles in another triangle, have the same measure as two angles in another triangle, the third angles have to be equal. And so what they say is AA means AAA. Means that two angles are congruent, therefore all three of the angles have to be congruent. Does that make sense? These two triangles obviously are not congruent. Their angles aren't even close. But let's say this is 50 and this is 100 and this is 100 and this is 50. What would this angle have to be? What would this angle have to be? So because these two sets were congruent, all three angles are congruent to each other. Does that make sense? No, they're not. They're similar is what they would be. They're not, but that's based on the angles. It's just an example. Yeah. Yeah. Does that make sense? If you know that two sets are the same, then the third set has to be the same as well. All right. You've got a figure like that. And these two have two arc marks. So what does that mean about them? What do you know about these two angles? What are they? Say it loud. Vertical. So what does that mean about the triangles? These two are congruent. And so what's that mean about your triangles? They're similar because they have the same angles. Does that make sense? So I could say 4 over what? Over which side? Oh, whoop. Okay. Equals 5 over what? 5 is across from the triangle that didn't have any arc marks, so I made it 3. And x is across from the arc marks with 3. And then what would that equal? Okay. Do what? The 5 is across from the 3 arc marks, and x is across from the 3 arc marks. That's how you know that those two sides are proportional. So which two proportions would you use to solve for x? 4 over 6 and 5 over x. So 4x would equal what? X would equal 30 over 4, which would be 15. Does that make sense? You're not usually going to get whole. Okay? And then which two would you use for y? 42 over 4, which is 21 over 2. Y'all see how that works? So even if they only give you two angle measurements, if they're congruent, what do we know about the two triangles? They're 7 times 6. 6 times 7 is 42. Any other questions on this? Have you been doing these before? Yeah. I just did these like last week. Okay. Any questions on that one? All right. Lawrence had 80 nickels and dimes. Who 80 nickels and dimes, whose value was $6.50. $6.50. She had 80 nickels and dimes, whose value was $6.50. What would be one equation? What would be the other equation? Do you agree? Okay. What would you do? Multiply by -5? What would you end up with? So D would equal, do you agree? you have 50 dimes, how many nickels? You see how that works? Any questions on those? Looking at another one. Roses sold for 12 pence each. Daffodils sold for 4 pence each. Jim bought 35 flowers and he spent 300 pence. All right, Kayla, go write one equation up on the board. Doesn't matter which one. Do you agree? No? Mm-hmm. All right, Emily, put the other equation up. Right idea, right? Okay. Make sense? Any questions on those two? So would you use elimination or substitution? Elimination, what would you multiply? By -4? You get -4r minus 4d equals what? 140? Do you agree? So what would you get? So r would equal, does that make sense? 300 minus 140. Are you asking how I got this? 35 times -12. I mean -4. So if you have 20 roses, how many daffodils do you have? Any questions there? No? See if you can find the value of x and y. Let's see the picture. Is it the 3, 4, 5, y, x, 5. Okay, Molly, will you go write the proportions? Three over 5 equals 5 over x equals 4 over y. Do you agree? That's okay. So 3x equals 25. So x would equal what? Does that make sense? And then 3y equals 20. So y would equal what? Any questions on this? Okay. Go ahead and clear your desk for your corrections.